Welcome back to Glasp Talk. Today we are excited to have Chris Meabe with us. And Chris is a senior content specialist at Foundation Marketing, a renowned marketing agency known for its innovative content strategies and digital campaigns. And with a rich background in content creation and digital marketing, Chris has been instrumental in crafting compelling narratives that resonates across diverse audiences. Today, we'll dive into the evolving landscape of content marketing, explore Chris's approach to storytelling, and uncover insights that can help any creator make a more significant impact. So let's get started and welcome Chris Meabe. Thank you for joining, Chris.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm really excited to get started.
Thank you. So, first of all, I introduced you briefly, but could you introduce yourself a bit, for people who don't know you yet?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, my name's Chris Miyabi. I'm a marketer with Foundation, just like you said. And I think that one thing that I want everyone to know about me is I care a lot about the words I write. I think that, we have a saying at Foundation that content is culture, and it's true. Our culture is made up of the things we read around us. So every day I try and affect that culture a little bit in a positive way.
Beautiful. And seems like your career started with say your background is like a sales and finance and I'm curious, how did you become a writer or content writer?
Yeah. So my first job that I got out of college was as an English teacher in Japan. I loved that experience, but I knew that it wasn't going to be, what I was going to do forever for the rest of my life. But I got some great skills out of that. How to break down a complex topic into simpler terms and how to, speak in front of other people in a confident and understandable way. So I said to myself, well, it seems like those are the kinds of skills that a salesperson would need, right? So I went off to my first job in sales. I was so eager, I was so excited, and I found out something that a lot of people find out when they start a sales job. I'm really bad at it. The cold calling just made me feel anxious. I would stutter on the phone. I was a mess. But I was pretty good at writing sales emails. And so I ended up actually being able to contribute to my team through the writing that I was able to produce. And when the COVID pandemic happened and I was laid off along with a good chunk of that company staff, I said, why don't I try and find a job where I can just focus on the writing? And that's what I've been doing ever since then. I started writing sales and marketing email sequences for Zoom Info. And then I went freelance when I moved to Spain until I saw a great opportunity right here at Foundation. And now I get to do all kinds of different writing for a huge diversity of companies.
Interesting. Yeah, thank you. So, yeah, thank you for talking about how you became a writer. But so, what made you think so you want to go to Japan and teach English in Japanese?
I never really knew that much about Japan. I never really watched anime as a kid other than like Pokemon.
Mhm.
But before I arrived in Japan, I didn't even know what Doraemon was. Never heard of it in my life. Or like One Piece or any of the like most popular pieces of like anime or anything like that. So I hadn't even watched Dragon Ball actually. So I really didn't know anything, and I said, "Man, I would love to learn about this place. Um, what's the best way for me to do that on a budget?" And then I found out that the Japanese government would actually pay me to go to Japan if I promised to, work as an English teacher there. And I said, "Well, that sounds like a pretty good deal." And I'll try it out for a year and just see what happens. I had a great time.
I see. Interesting. So many people going to Japan so are interested in anime's culture. So that's the main reason they go there. But so you are not interested.
I think
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
Mhm.
definitely got an appreciation for it while I was
Mhm.
there. It was a way to, connect with the little kids I was teaching for sure. Um, but yeah, before I went, I was just an ignorant American.
Mhm. I see. Interesting. But so yeah, experiencing like teaching English in Japanese people in a short sentence so help you understand so like sales lighting so or those kind of things like
Yeah, that's exactly
uh
right.
yeah. And you mentioned that you used to be or you were not good at like sales so in person, yeah, sales in person, but so you were good at like sales lighting. So
Mhm.
were there any like points so you can avoid or like what is like your advantage of like sales lighter? So
I think that there were two things that kept me from being a really effective salesperson over the phone. One was that I get really in my head about it. I really wanted what I said to be perfect. And while I think I'm an effective speaker, there's a lot more pressure when there's money on the line, right? And so I suddenly got really nervous, got in my own head about it. That was definitely one big factor. And the second big factor that made me a more effective writer than salesperson was I was able to ask people for help when you're on the phone with someone and they ask you a question or they have an objection, you can't just turn to your buddy the next desk over and say, "Hey, what would you say in this situation?" But over email, you can take all the time you want to do that, and in fact, it's probably the best way to learn. So managing kind of nervousness and pressure, and then also learning from my peers were the two things that really led me to writing as what I'm best at.
I see. Interesting. Yeah, interesting. Yeah, so that resonates me. So yeah, I'm not good at sales in person, but so when I write, so not sales, but so email, so I organize what I want to say. So yeah, in advance and yeah, interesting. So it kind of like going back to the question, but so you mentioned so you are in Spain, right? So
Mhm.
so what made you so decide, oh, I want to go to Spain and find a job there?
Well, there's a couple things.
Mhm.
One is that my fiance, we're getting married this Saturday.
Wow. Oh,
Yeah,
congrats.
so
Yeah.
thank
Yeah.
you. Yeah. So my fiance is from Spain, and she had been living here in the U.S., but American visas are can be pretty tough to get, and in addition, I'd studied abroad in Spain during college. I spoke some Spanish. I actually had been to the city where my fiance's from. And
Mm.
so we knew we had a place to stay there, and I knew that I liked the city. So I said, why not? I'll give it a shot while I'm freelancing. And, the cost of living is a lot lower in southern Spain than in Portland, Oregon. And so it's a lot easier to get started as a freelancer when you aren't so worried about the costs as well.
I see. Yeah, and congratulations on your knowledge. Yeah.
Thank you.
How long have you been in Spain then?
I've been in Spain for almost 3 years now, and I'm loving it. I'm in the south in a city called Granada. It's a beautiful place. I really recommend that you guys should visit if you're ever going to Spain, if you're ever
Oh,
planning a
yeah,
trip. It's got an enormous, amazing castle.
I will. Yeah, thanks. And so you used to, yeah, you worked in the United States, also in Japan, and so you're now working in Europe, in Spain. So
Uh-huh.
do you see any difference in like working culture or like in terms of like content marketing or marketing? So do you see any difference among those countries?
Yeah, I think that there's quite a lot of differences. And, being someone who didn't speak much Japanese when I lived in Japan, and I've only forgotten what I had learned since then. I can't say that I'm an expert on Japanese culture or anything. But what I can say is one thing that stood out was expectations about how much time you should spend in the office and what you should do while you're there. For example, when I started my sales job in the US, the expectation was come to the office whenever you need to, leave when you can, and what matters at the end of the day is what numbers do you put up? Do you make sales? That's all they care about. If you're never in the office, but you're making them a bunch of money, my manager couldn't care less. I mean, as long as I come to the meetings, but what matters most is the bottom line. And when I was working in Japan, it was a bit different. It was very strict about which hours I needed to be in the office. And, I had to at least look like I was working while I was there. At the office, the office where I was in the US, there was beer taps. There's people that would play ping pong while they were there. They weren't working, but they were in the office because they wanted to be. That certainly wasn't the case in the junior high school where I taught. Um, and then in Spain, working culture is really interesting because people care deeply about their work-life balance. So I had an internship while I was here, when I was studying abroad here, and it was for a tourism agency. And the owner would close the store at 2 p.m. every day and open it again at 5 p.m. every day because he wanted to have a long lunch with his family. And I told him one time, I said, Fran, if you were open from 2 p.m. to 5 p.m., we'd probably get a lot more customers. That's when a lot of the American tourists are just finishing lunch and walking around and wondering what they can do next, right? And he said, yeah, but then I wouldn't be able to have lunch with my family. So what's the point? What am I doing this for? So I think in terms of schedule and values, there's some really interesting differences between how organizations run themselves in each culture.
Interesting. I think I have the same question. So why they are taking so like off so from like 2 p.m. or 5 p.m. So yeah, but so yeah, that's a different culture. So I respect it. How about like difference so in like content marketing or sales so between United States and Europe? So do you have any experience or thoughts?
Yeah, I think that there's a few different kinds of differences that you'll see. One is that when you're targeting when you're doing content marketing in Europe in the English language, um, are you talking to native English speakers or are you talking to people who learned English as a second language? If you're targeting a UK audience, then you have to change, your language to be UK specific. But if you're targeting, let's say, a Central European or a Scandinavian audience, then you might want to change your vocabulary based on that as well. Not use so much industry jargon or regional terminology that we would use in the US. And I think that there's also differences in what you want to focus on based on what different cultures value. So I talked about the differences between Spanish and American business culture. And so imagine trying to sell to a business owner in the US versus a business owner in Spain. Their priorities are going to be different. And the different types of regulations you have to follow are different. The different what's on their mind in terms of what they can do, what's practical, are going to be different. Even something as basic such as the infrastructure available to them. In some parts of the rural US, we don't have great internet connections. If you're selling to South Korea, that's really the case. They have great internet there, right? So there's all kinds of things that you have to keep in mind.
And when in writing or in sales, and do you have any example that you expected something, the difference between what you expected and what the reality was different, something like that, in good way or bad way?
I think one thing that surprised me when I started doing content marketing was that uh, a lot of the people that do content marketing don't have much of a formal background in marketing. And so the standards and methodologies can really vary so widely from company to company and even within a company. And so, because of that, it's really hard to figure out, what is a company's strategy? What are we doing even? And that's one of the things that I like the most about working for Foundation is we do these breakdowns in our blog called The Lab, where we try and understand other companies' marketing strategies. And that turns out to be pretty tough because there isn't just one recipe that everyone's following. Most of these people didn't go to business school, didn't go to school to study marketing. They're just doing what seems like it will work, and that creates really interesting types of innovation.
Interesting.
And so, yeah, you mentioned about like content marketing. So, but and so I'm just curious, like, what is like good content or great content? So, do you have any like characteristic or like common things? So, in great content.
I think that great content is defined by the goal of that content. So let me explain that. If you are writing a blog post to attract people to come to your website, what we'd call top of funnel content, right? If you're writing that, then the goal is get people to click on the article. And that's it, right? You want them to see your brand name and, maybe remember you next time. That's the top of the funnel. So the goal is to just get visits. But that's ultimately not what a lot of companies want. What a lot of companies want are two other kinds of content, either thought leadership or bottom of funnel content. So, thought leadership is more in-depth content that builds your brand as someone that other people can trust as an authority on a topic. So, what makes thought leadership content great is having original research, right? Citing experts, being in depth, answering every question a person could have, and creating a complete guide on a topic. That is great thought leadership. But what makes great bottom of funnel content is really different. Bottom of funnel is people who are ready to buy and just trying to decide what company they want to buy from, right? And so great bottom of funnel content is content that makes someone go, I'm going to buy from them. And that's it. That's how you measure it. So it doesn't necessarily need to involve original research, but it does need to involve a compelling call to action, a reason for them to buy that. Clarity, conciseness, those types of factors are really different than what you would find in thought leadership, right? Thought leadership, I'm going on for pages and pages about every consideration you need to make. It can get pretty boring if you don't do it well. Whereas bottom of funnel content is pretty unlikely to be boring because we're talking about bullet points. We're talking about a list of pros, a list of reasons why we're better than our competitors. Here's the deal that you can get. Here's a big button that says buy now, that sort of stuff. So what makes great content really is determined by what do you want from your content, and then how well does that achieve its goal?
I see. And I'm also curious, as a content specialist, content marketer, and when you read other people's, other companies' blog posts, articles, do you see, oh, this article is about XYZ, or this company does this strategy or something like that. Do you read that way? I'm just
Yeah,
curious, how you see the articles or other companies,
yeah, totally.
articles.
It especially since ChatGPT came out, it's become really obvious, right, when companies are relying too heavily on ChatGPT. I think that there's absolutely productive, functional ways to use ChatGPT, but a lot of people don't use it in those ways. They end up relying on it too heavily. And I open an article, let's say it's even a review article just for my personal life, and I want to say, oh, what's the best printer to buy? And then the first sentence, if it says something like a printer is more than a household appliance, it's something that changes your life. I'm like, oh, ChatGPT, that exact construction, I've seen that a million times. That's ChatGPT 100%. So it, I think, made me very cynical in certain ways. But when I see great content, and there's a lot of brands that are producing really excellent content still today, and I think it's getting even more competitive. Um, then that makes me appreciate it more and say, wow, someone really took the time to go the extra mile and write a great piece here. And I'll share it with my coworkers too and say, hey, look at this stuff that these people are making. We got to make stuff like them.
I see. And you tapped onto AI part and ChatGPT. So when you write something or brainstorm the ideas to write next, and do you use AI? Because nowadays, as you mentioned, many people using ChatGPT, Anthropic Claude to create content, right? But as a professional writer and content specialist, do you use AI in your process, writing process, editing process?
That really depends on the type of content that I'm writing and the preferences of the client. There's some clients that care deeply that, every word is written by a person, and that makes sense. It can be damaging for certain brands if you saw tomorrow that the New York Times had an article that was obviously ChatGPT, that would seriously hurt their brand and the brand of the journalist that claimed to have written it, right? Whereas with other brands, they might be completely okay because everyone knows that you have 6,000 product pages. I mean, it makes sense to use ChatGPT in that case. So I do use it sometimes, but what I've often found is even when I'd like to use it, it takes so much prompt engineering to get the exact result I'm looking for. Sometimes it's easier to just write the thing myself. So, our CEO Ross is really excited about where AI is going, and he wants to make sure that we're taking advantage of the technology where we can. But he's also realistic about what it can and cannot do. So he, invests in training us on stuff like prompt engineering and making sure that we're using AI in an effective and responsible way.
Have you found any useful prompt or strategy prompting strategy so far?
There's a ton, and I can recommend a prompt engineering course if you're
Oh,
interested, because it's a really uh, complicated, interesting topic. But one that I learned about recently is basically you write a simulated conversation. So you write a prompt and then you write the answer that you would want ChatGPT to give you for that prompt and back and forth over and over again. So you write that whole conversation. You say, ChatGPT, I want our conversation to look something like this. And then it'll learn to mimic those types of responses. And that can really help you establish a brand voice with an AI. If you can, say, don't give this type of response, but instead list out the conversation that you want, then it'll start incorporating that type of language, those types of sentence structures. That can be really helpful.
Interesting. Uh, do you use like ChatGPT mainly, or do you use like Gemini or Claude or other AI tool?
Personally, I mostly use ChatGPT. I've also used other tools like Jasper that can be really great in certain situations. I haven't personally used Claude, and I've only used Gemini a little bit. One thing I looked into was the hallucination rate of different AI models, because that's really important for the companies we work with that, you don't want to put any incorrect information out there. So we spend a lot of time, if we do use AI, combing through every statement that it makes to make sure that we can verify that is true. And saves you a lot of time if the hallucination rate is lower. And what I was able to find from research other people did is that ChatGPT has generally the lowest hallucination rate of the large language models out there right now.
Sense. Yeah, it's interesting. So you're using Jasper. So yeah, yeah. And so because it used to be famous, so in my understanding, but so ChatGPT came out, so yeah, many people switched to using ChatGPT. So interesting. And so when you're writing so content, so besides AI, so what kind of tool are you using? So for example, if we are writing a content draft, so where do you write on it?
I use Google Docs. I know it's
Oh, simple.
basic. I
Yeah.
know
Mhm.
it's it's nothing fancy, but I just need to write the words down. And we also, I pull in images from other websites and that sort of thing, but really 90% of the work that I do is right there on Google Docs.
Mhm. So
And
it's
when you keep, oh, sorry, when you keep some ideas, because as a writer, you do some research and keep ideas, and then you write something on Google Docs, right? And when you, so what kind of tools do you use to keep the ideas and
Yeah,
organize researches?
I try and organize my research all beforehand by making an outline and putting the sources that I want to use in that outline. It doesn't always happen as neatly as I'd like it to, but ideally, that's the methodology that I'd follow. And so then once I've done all the research and made the outline and hopefully had a client review the outline as well to make sure that we're on the same page about everything, then it's not exactly plug and play, but it's a lot easier to just go in and say, oh, yeah, I need to cite these two sources when I'm making this claim. And it goes pretty quickly from there.
so all on Google Doc, right? So
Yes. Yeah.
all ideas. Interesting. How about content ideas? So when you decide an idea to write or like topic to write, so you are starting research and so put all the like resources and draft on Google Doc. But so when you are listing up like content ideas, so where do you like list up?
That's done by the strategy team, and they are
Also not
fantastic.
yourself. Okay.
Yeah, they, they
Hmm.
they they're fantastic, and they use a whole bunch of different tools to figure that out that I can't even begin to explain.
Okay.
Um, so I'm sorry. I wish I could be more helpful with that.
Yeah, but yeah.
But
Hmm.
yeah, mostly what I get is I get an Excel sheet that says, "Chris, you're writing about this today," and I say, "Yes, sir."
Mhm. Interesting. Yeah, that's like very organized. So yeah, wait, like I see. Yeah,
And,
and
and also, when you writing something, when you write something,
of
uh, editors or someone needs to review your work, right? How does
course.
that process work?
We have an internal review stage and an external review stage. So the internal review is when one of our editors that Foundation employs reviews the article because we don't want to give anything to a client unless we feel confident that they're going to like it. So the editor doesn't just, look for spelling errors and that sort of thing, although they're very good at that. They also try and look at an article from a client's perspective and say, will the client like this? And so then the editor hands the article over to the client, and the client might have some changes as well. And it might just go back to the editor for those minor tweaks, or it might go all the way back to me if we're completely off base and we need to write it again, right? So it's a very two-sided conversational process of saying, do you like this? What do we need to change? We're trying to make excellent content that our clients are really happy about. So not only is there an editor, but there's also that client review, and sometimes multiple cycles through that to make sure that the content we produce is as good as can be.
I see.
I see.
But
Mm.
I, I don't know if this happens, but maybe a stupid question, but sometimes clients wants to have this sentence somehow, and they keep changing, and sometimes does that happen? Like clients messing up your writing, and but you want to keep this, as a writer, editor, but clients wants to have this, and kind of
You know,
conflict. between them.
There's absolutely, going to be conflicts where I think, I wouldn't write something if I didn't think it was good, right? So when I turn it in, I'm saying, hey, I think that this is a pretty good piece. So anytime you have editorial feedback, you go, well, shucks, maybe that wasn't as good as I thought it would be. And so that's always kind of happening, and you just learn to live with it, and you have to be humble about it because the truth is our clients know a heck of a lot more about their industries than we do. So if they're giving us feedback and they're saying this is the truth and this is how we want to talk about it, then it's our job to say, yeah, you know way more about this than we do. We're just here to serve them and hopefully make it a bit easier for them.
I see. So when clients ask your company so to like collaborate, so hey, I want to like for example, yeah, increase our brand awareness or like increase like conversion rates or whatever. But so how does that like process start? Like your client asks you to write this topic's content or like your company so helps a client so and so, I mean your company so start like discussing with company and CEO or marketer then so hey so this is the best way to increase like brand awareness so why don't we write so this topic content so yeah the process think.
Yeah. So I think often what happens is a client will come to us with a problem or a goal. And I'm not in on these conversations, so I can't tell you exactly how they happen. But what I would imagine is they say, hey, we want more revenue. We want more brand awareness, like you were saying, right? And then we might not be experts on technical topics within their industry, but we are experts on increasing brand awareness and generating leads for companies, that sort of a thing. So we will come to them then, once they've given us that goal, we come to them with a pitch on let's talk about how we would get you there. That's where our strategists come in. They formulate an elaborate strategy for how to get the client across the line the way they want. And then I think it turns into a conversation from there. The client says, oh, we've had success doing Y tactic instead of X like you proposed. And we say, oh, we've actually done that for another client. So we can absolutely incorporate it, that sort of thing.
I see. Then so your maybe strategy team so decides what kind of topics they are going to write, and so they are going to like brand awareness like content or like bottom funnel content or something like that. Like
Yeah, it's totally right. I think
I
it's
see.
they
Mhm.
they
Mm,
our strategy team adapts each strategy to the needs of the client.
I see.
And
Interesting. Mhm.
and in at the same time, I read your article why content distribution is more important than ever before. And you mentioned, like the definition of good content and so on. And it's used to be said, content is king, but nowadays kind of, like distribution is kind of king or queen or king. And then
Mhm.
what's your thoughts on content distribution? And I think you have helped many companies, clients, help them content creation at the same time, distribution, right? And
Right.
I guess, yeah, you have some thoughts around content distribution.
You know, the same tragic thing is happening at companies all over the world every day. They make amazing content and nobody sees it.
Mm.
This happens because they aren't distributing their content well. And, it's hard to blame them because they got told for decades content is king. They thought, okay, if we write an amazing white paper, if we build it, they will come. But it turns out that's not true. It turns out you need to build it and make a big billboard at the side of the highway that says, come check this out. So that's the distribution. And you can get a lot of mileage out of one piece of content that a lot of people aren't realizing they can get out of it. So let's make an example. Um, I recently gave a talk at a virtual conference called Intersection 2024. And my talk was about the limits of ChatGPT, how people are often using it wrong.
Mm.
And that was a 40-minute long PowerPoint with a lecture. I think it was useful for those people. I think that was great content, but it had a limited audience because it was a live streamed webinar. So then how do we turn that piece of content into something more valuable through distribution? Well, the first thing is you record it, right? So that's an easy step two is record the thing and put it online. You can see it on our YouTube right now. So that's step one. And then step two, we're just starting to do right now because it just happened. So step two, you can see on our LinkedIn, they just published a clip from that same talk. So we're cutting that lecture into smaller pieces so we can distribute it via social media and deliver more value to even more people. You can do the same thing with a blog post, right? You cut out a core insight and you make it a social media post. You post it to Reddit. You turn it into a question on a relevant forum, or you answer someone else's question with it. So these are all ways of distributing content where you don't have to invest the time in it would take to create a whole new social media post. You shouldn't plagiarize from yourself, but you can certainly take the same ideas and say, here's the short version. If you want the long one, read this blog post here. You can even do multimedia distribution. So you can turn a blog post into a video where you talk about that same topic, just naturally saying it from the top of your head. So distribution is important because it is a value multiplier. Distribution takes what would be just one moment and it stretches it out into something much larger and much more valuable.
Makes sense. Yeah.
And some influencers told us, I read some, blog posts and tweet, YouTube video, that where influencers, talk about how their audience grew over time. Then some people said, you should focus on one channel, like, YouTube. If you want to go into YouTube, focus on your time, effort into YouTube, only in YouTube. Now, you shouldn't do TikTok or Twitter, and so on. But what's the thoughts on this? As a marketer and content distributor, should I use all the media channels, or we should recommend focusing on one, like YouTube, one media, when in distribution?
Well, there's a lot of factors that go into that, but two factors I would start at are what's your time, which also is what's your budget, and what's your goal. So, for example, if you just want people to see your face, TikTok is a great option. TikTok, that you can get 1 million plays on TikTok, not no problem, but it's a heck of a lot easier there than on YouTube, right? So if that's your goal, that's the channel for you. Just do that. Uh, but maybe you want to target more than one sector of an audience. Some of your audience is really young and on TikTok. Some of your audience is a little bit older and they're professionals on LinkedIn. Or maybe you have a huge budget and you just want to see what works. So you try every channel you can. Um, if you have a lot of time and you want to become an expert in every channel, you can do that. What I would recommend is try with a few channels first. Experiment, do a little bit of experimenting, see where you have success, and see if you can explode that success into something really great. You could do a little bit of market research, look at where your competitors are, look at where they aren't and try and figure out, is that smart that they're avoiding TikTok, or are they missing out on a great opportunity? So there's the budget aspect of, look, if you only have a little bit of time or a little bit of money, focusing on one channel is the best way to get the most value. But the other question of what is your goal, I think, is the most critical one, where different channels are better for different types of content, for different content goals, and for different creators as well. If you are a really compelling public speaker, yeah, you should be making videos. If you're an excellent writer, stick to text.
Mm. I see. Totally makes sense. So yeah, distribution, I understand it. So yeah, so try experiment. So with few channel and focus on like one channel maybe later. So after finding a good solution. So yeah, and do you have any advice? So in terms of like, distributing, so yeah, content to many people, meaning so increasing awareness because, content is king and distribution is queen. And so we are trying to, increase the format of media and try to like distribute in many channels. But the key is like, yeah, even if we do that, so it's so difficult to get like, viewed by other people or like potential users. So do you have any advice? So in terms of like increasing like views or like, you know, yeah, awareness of like content.
You
That's
know,
like,
you
yeah.
you should look really closely at what other people are doing. A lot of the best
Okay.
artists started by copying other masters' works, and that's valid.
Mm.
So if you see on TikTok, something that always gets a lot of views is a quick zoom and making a maybe controversial, like hot take. I don't know, try that out. See if it works for you. Be experimenting, be playful, try and find your voice and copy the strategies that other people are using because that's what works. And then once you get a little bit of momentum, then you can innovate and make it really your own. But to start out, just try and see what the norms are for the platform, what works on that platform, what would be really out of the ordinary, right? So if you're trying to distribute on Reddit, for example, you go to a subreddit and you say, "Hello, we're from this company and we want your money." They're going to say, "Go away. We don't want you." Right? No one on Reddit
Yeah.
wants a company advertising to them. But if you go on Reddit and you say, hey, here's the answer to your question, and you just have a thing in your profile that says, I'm from this company, that's the kind of content that Redditors tend to really appreciate. Someone who's a real person that's just helping out without asking for anything in return, then they'll respond to that. So understanding the kind of subcultural norms of each platform by figuring out what is working already on that platform I think is a great way to start out when you're just trying to get your first few views. Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah. I got it. Thank you. So kind of like, going back to the question, but so yeah, you mentioned that so there are like, how to say, brand trust content or something like that, and bottom funnel content, like
Hmm. hmm
so yeah. So in general, so yeah, how many like how much is a rate so of like content, like this company is lighting so brand trust content, so like 10 articles and bottom funnel content is one, so meaning so yeah, they light much more, so yeah, brand trust content. So how do like companies like address it?
So I think that it really varies depending on your personal strategy and goals. I'm sorry to keep coming back to this, but
Ah,
but the
yes.
goals is really what it comes back to because if you are a university, for example, then thought leadership is exactly where you want to be because your whole brand depends on you being smart, having something interesting to say, right? So you should be doing a lot of thought leadership. But if you're a company, a consumer facing company that sells really inexpensive products, right? Then you just want the highest volume of people coming to your website as possible because that high volume is the only thing that's going to make you revenue, right? So you can base that off of your sales model or your business model. You can base that off of the brand perception you want to have, or you can base it off of, again, what are you good at? Where are your strengths and where do you see the most opportunity for your own ability to create good content? If you are, the number one AI expert and you used to work for OpenAI and you're starting your own AI company, then thought leadership is going to be powerful, but you might not be the best at making a call to action because I mean that's not what you got a PhD in. So, understanding your goals and your strengths and trying to find the intersection between them, I think is a good way to think about which content you should go for.
Yeah. And I'm curious, how do you learn or keep up with the current, recent updates in marketing, content distribution, and so on? Do you follow some influencers, or is it learning by doing, or do you join conference so that exchange some ideas with other folks? And
All of the above. With one more way that I learned that I think is really valuable and really unique to Foundation, which is the Foundation Lab. That blog that we write, we don't just write it because it's fun and because other people in the industry appreciate it. We write it for us because the more I study how other companies do their marketing, the more I learn about how to do marketing, right? So I'm not just trying to follow the influencers, although many of them are really smart people with insightful contributions. I'm trying to create my own original insights based on this research. And I think that that's a lot of the most valuable learning that I've done has been when I'm intentionally breaking down another company's marketing strategy and formalizing that into a blog post where hopefully I can help some other people out as well.
I see. Mhm. That, yeah, totally makes sense. And yeah, that's really impressive work. And yeah, thank you. So, our audience are like aspiring writers, content writer, content marketer, and so on. So, do you have some advice to them? Where to start, what they should have keep in mind, to become a good content writer or content, specialist.
The industry is changing really rapidly right now. So it's a challenging time, I think, to become a content writer. But the first step is to make a portfolio. That's what everyone is always going to ask for when you apply to a job, or if you're a freelancer, when you try and get a client, they're going to say, "Well, show me what you got. What kind of stuff do you write?" But I think that with AI, for example, it's becoming challenging to build a portfolio that really stands out. So one way to do that is to get industry specific and to get some knowledge of an industry. So whatever you've worked in the past or whatever personal experience you have where you can bring a unique perspective, lean on those strengths, right? Anyone who's coming into marketing right now, don't come into marketing, come into biotechnology marketing, or if that's what your background is, or tourism marketing for the area that you're from. A place where you have really unique, specialized knowledge that you can bring to the table and say, I can go above and beyond what any robot can write because it doesn't know about the street that I live on, or it doesn't know about the thing I studied in college. And then you can really stand out.
Yeah, that's a really great advice. And yeah, thank you. And I think this is the last question. And so, since Grasp is a platform where people leave their learning, like, what they're reading and learning, watching, and as their digital legacy for others. And I'd like to ask you what kind of, legacy impact do you want to leave behind for the future generations?
I really want to be a helpful person. I want to make other people's lives a little easier. And I don't know that I'm ever going to be president or anything like that, but if I can do that a little bit through the content that I create and the small ways that I can help affect culture, then I think that that's a pretty good impact to have.
Yeah, thank you. That's beautiful. Yeah, thank you. And thank you for joining today's talk, and Chris.
Yeah, thanks so much for chatting. I had a wonderful time. I hope that you guys did, and I hope it all goes viral.
Oh, yes, yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah.